Is it about finding the happiness? Is it about observing the happiness? We'll go deeper into that. Tomorrow, I'll be going into conversation with Dr. Shamoli Khera. She is a personal branding expert, TV anchor, and day after tomorrow, it will be about job hunting strategy during pandemic. Now, this is the hot topic for everybody. What are the strategies to follow? What all things have to be conversed? Will all be there on Empowerment Talks, and the day after, we will have Priya Jethani. She's an anchor based in Dubai, had conducted hundreds of celebrity interviews, and she will be coming. So this week is all about women, and this week is all about beautiful conversations with these beautiful souls from all around the world. Now, who is Shaen Yu? Shaen Yu is a TEDx speaker, number one best-selling author, founder of Happiness Scientist. Now she is someone who has been quite vocal about positive psychology. Now, what is positive psychology? She went on studying in University of Penn to study positive psychology to understand how could I make schools place where students, teachers, and the whole community could flourish. She learned that happiness is learnable and teachable. Now, she is someone who has been bullied in school, and thereafter she went into her teaching career. He left the teaching career and now do the training and consultancy because she found the reason that happiness is teachable. For the past 8 years, she has spoken to more than 10,000 people in Singapore, Philippines, and Australia. She has been featured on radio, television, and today, she is here on Empowerment Talks to share with us the thoughts of how to find your happiness in this tough times, and how to go about having those beautiful, beautiful conversations, and how to go about having spreading this happiness. So, thank you very much, Shine Yo, for joining us from all the way from Singapore. I know it's been tough. It's been 11 p.m. in the night, but thank you for taking us the time. So, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Yesh, and a good morning, evening, whatever time it is for you. Over here it is 11 o'clock here at night. So yes, very eager and excited to be here to share a little bit more about happiness. So Yesh, thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. One second. Yeah. So I know for a fact that we'll straight away jump into the topic. And one of the things that do excite me about happiness is every single person in this world have a different definition of happiness. And the
Yes.
irony is it's a so used word, and how can, because it's a perspective that defines us. But I want to dive deeper. What exactly when you go about defining the happiness? And I want to understand from the chat box, everybody, what is your definition of happiness as well? For all of you who are watching us on YouTube as well, what is your definition of happiness while our happiness scientist describes it for us?
Well, I mean, there are two definitions. I think one is from the psychological framework and how you define happiness. And of course, happiness is a layman term, isn't it? It's easy to understand. When you say happiness, most people see a smiley face, right? But of course, it goes beyond that. And in positive psychology, there are many different frameworks. And the one that I reference most often in terms of finding happiness or flourishing life, as you described in my introduction, is actually based on this framework called PERMA. So for those of you who have not heard of it, PERMA is a framework that was designed and kind of put together by Dr. Martin Seligman, who was my teacher at the University of Pennsylvania. And what does PERMA stand for? P stands for positive emotions. So you feel that your life is going well if you have more positive emotions than negative emotions in your life. So if you feel more joy, serenity, excitement, inspiration, just like what you felt when you're watching that video, hitting that milestone of 100, if you feel more of that than negative emotions, then that's one pillar of your life that's going well. The second one is engagement. That is, how engaged are you in the things that you are doing? Do you go to work every day and feel like, oh, I'm just going through the motion? Or do you go to work and say, yes, I'm here because I enjoy my work? The third pillar is relationships. How good are the relationships? How strong are the relationships in your
Maybe
life?
I'll just
Right?
maybe we may I just have to break it down because I want to dwell deeper into the topic so
Sure,
we
sure,
can
sure.
go
I'm
in
just getting too excited, Yash.
yeah, because it's getting faster, and the people have to gulp it as well. So
Sure.
the first thing that you mentioned is the positive psychology. right?
Positive emotions, yeah.
Positive emotions. So positive emotions, is it the emotions that are coming, the temporarily ones? That's what happens with everybody. Like you get into a positive state, you are there in that positive state, straight away you jump into something happens. So how do you go about, defining those positive emotions? Is it when the dopamine gets released in the body? Is it those chemical releases that you're talking about, or is it the temporary reactions to the actions?
Yes, so emotions are generally fleeting, and particularly for positive emotions. So they come and they go, right? And of course, chemicals, there are happiness chemicals that help us to feel good, like dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin. So positive emotions are different from negative emotions, right? Negative emotions, I don't know about you, Yesh, but sometimes when I'm angry, I go to bed and I wake up, I'm still angry.
Okay.
Whereas for positive emotions, they come and they go. So, and some of it is because of what we experience, right? And some of it is the chemicals that we have in our body, obviously. Yeah.
Is it because we think about the negative things in our life more, that
Mm.
because you tend to spend more energy thinking about your worries rather than thinking about what you have, that's where the positive emotions are so well, like so less remains in our life? Is it because of that, or?
Well, I mean, we human beings have this thing called the negative bias. So we are more prone to pay attention to things that are negative, right? Our ancestors paid more attention to a saber-toothed tiger than they did a red rose, because if they didn't, they would be dead, and none of us would exist. And therefore, we are more, we tend to overthink. We tend to focus a lot more on the negative emotions, and therefore they tend to linger. Whereas for the positive emotions, they come and they go. And so we need to be intentional if we want them to stay, right? So thinking about what you have, talking about the gratitude journals, yeah, that's how you do it. You focus more on it, spend more time thinking about it.
Okay, so that was about positive emotions. So I think our viewers got a bit more idea about what positive emotions that we were talking about. The next one that you
Yes,
talked about was emotional something, right?
was engagement.
Engagement, yeah. So in this engagement that you're talking about, is it the engagement with the family, or is it the engagement with the emotions itself, that whether you react or act? What exactly you mean by that?
The engagement is really how you feel, right? So are you feeling 100% immersed in the things that you're doing? Right? Like when you're reading a book, do you feel like you get lost in the book and that you enjoy it so much that time seems to stand still or pass by really quickly? Right? When you go to work, are you just going through the motion? Or do you go there thinking, I'm so glad I'm here to be at work today? Right? So it's more of that feeling that you have, that you are in the flow, in the zone.
Okay, yeah. And the third thing was, you can keep on doing it. I'll
Re-
read.
relationships.
Okay.
So, I mean, we're talking about the quality of the relationships and not just the quantity of the relationships, right? So, not how many Facebook friends you have, but how many people can you call at 3 a.m. in the middle of the night when something goes wrong? Those kind of relationships.
Now, in those relationships, I have a question. Like, how do I go about developing those relationships? Okay, I don't have many friends like who I can call at 3 a.m. in the night, but the question comes in: how do I go about developing those relationships? What should be my state of mind if I have figured out somebody that he can be my 3 a.m. friend? But what
Mm.
should I do as a person to make him a 3 a.m. friend for me?
I'm not sure you can make anyone a 3 a.m. friend. I think it's got to be, I mean, just joking. I mean, it's got to be mutual, right? So I think when they talk about high quality connection, a high quality relationship, they're looking at whether this relation can take challenge or not. So if you go through a
Wow.
rough patch together, will that person be there, or will that person say, you didn't, you're just a good for nothing? Will they just storm off and find the next best friend that they can make? Right? And then there's a feeling that it's mutual. So you can't make someone be your friend. They've also got to feel that you are their friend, right? So that sense of mutuality is really important to build a strong friendship.
I think that's a very valid point made here, because if I look back in my life, I've enjoyed my good moments with, I think, hundreds of friends. but I've enjoyed, like I'll spend my low moments with only few of the friends, and those friends have been like friends for life because I know I've
Mm.
gone through that rough patch with them together. That's so true. That's so true. Yeah.
Yeah, and so the next one is meaning in life. And that is, a bit more existential. We are starting to ask ourselves, what does this life mean? What am I doing here? And people who have meaning are very purposeful. They know where they're going. They're very intentional, and they feel connected to something that's bigger than themselves, right? So it isn't just, oh, I'm going to job because I'm going to a job, but maybe I'm doing my job because it's going to impact people. It's going to make the world a better place. So that also contributes to happiness.
So you said positive emotions, engagement, relationships, and meaning. So
Yes.
that's what has been your pillars of defining what happiness is all about and how do you go about achieving it. Now, I would take you to the place where you went on to study the positive psychology.
Mm.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. It's a 3 years course. It's a 1 year course, or how long
Oh,
the?
it's a 1 year course.
Okay. So in that 1 year, what actually you learned, or what actually you guys practiced that as a normal human being that I'm not, like that has been not there in my life. How do you explain me the terms that you have studied in that 1 year? Because what have you studied there? Like I want to, because this is such a intriguing topic, psychology.
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's really hard to describe in a nutshell, but really it's to understand what makes it's not just about happiness. I think it's a very deep form of understanding who you are and being okay with who you are. There are so many people who try to be someone else. They wear a lot of masks. And when they're in front of their boss, they're prim and proper. When they're in front of their wife, they're someone else. When they're in front of their friend, they're someone else. And sometimes they don't really know who they are. And I think aside from the psychological knowledge that I learned, I also learned to remove the mask and ask myself, well, who am I? And how can I just be happy the way I am instead of trying to live up to what other people want me to be, what other people think I should be? That kind of happiness is very different from just a smiley face.
Okay, so it was more of a transformational experience for you rather than going about and studying the things. And so, how have you been transformed in that 1 year? If you want to explain me in this one word.
Oh, in just one word? Um, I don't know how to do it in one word, but it was inspirational. That's what I would say. It inspires you to be a better person.
Okay.
And of course, the science is very important. That's why I call myself happiness scientist, right? The psychology knowledge was very important, but it's the application of that knowledge into your own life that is what makes the difference.
Okay, that's the application part. That's all make the difference for every knowledge that we kind of garner through webinars, through talks, and everything that we do here. Now, I would straight away jump into the topic. The topic was how to find happiness in these challenging times. Now, these challenging times, now it's the COVID, the pandemic, and but the challenges keeps on coming in the life. So what is your formula, what is your strategies that you want to tell to the world about? What is it that in this tough times will pass through, or how do they go about finding that small happiness in their life?
Yeah, I think it comes from, to me, it comes from creating moments of joy. I would
Wow.
say that, for many people, they would say, there's so much negativity in the environment. Why is this world like that now? And it's so easy to then be drawn into everything that's negative around us and forget that there are moments in our life that are beautiful still, right? And of course, it differs from person to person. But for example, waking up and being able to make a hot coffee and taking time to savor the coffee, that is a moment of joy. It used to be a little moment, but I think in times of crisis like we're going through now, in times of challenge, these little moments become the big moments, right? And or maybe for those of you with children, you watch your children and they learn new things every day. But maybe in the past, we were too busy working. We didn't have the time to stay at home and look at them, right? So I think happiness in these times can still be found. We need to notice these moments and not let them just zoom by us.
So I understand for a fact that you have to create those negative movements, and I'm sorry I've been putting you into the vulnerable position here, but I these questions just pop up of my mind. Um, so always the negative sphere of losing a job, or negative sphere of a pay cut, negative thing about a bigger things that impact me much more in my life. So I just ignored like whether my kids are going to bed on sleep, whether I'm telling them. So this is what happens, that your whole, because that thought is always there, whether I'll be getting the bread for my family for the coming after 3 months or not, or whether after 4 months or not. And the very thought of it makes you so scared that you don't think about everything good that is happening in my life. So how has been, because you have gone through a phase in your life when you were quite young, that when you were bullied, and then so how do
Mm.
you go about explaining, and what is that message you want to give to those people, or someone like me who just struggle to find happiness?
Yeah, I think, I think life is full of good moments and bad moments. And I wouldn't say that I want to remove those bad moments from my life because they have taught me something. So I think if you are struggling and you're going through something, one thing you need to do is that you need to acknowledge how you're feeling. Many people try to bottle it up or push it away or run away from it and say, I'm just going to ignore it, but one thing you need to do is just acknowledge that if you are struggling not having a job, if you can't connect with your partner or whatever it is, acknowledge the fear and negativity that you are experiencing. But you also need to focus on the things that you can control. Many people try to change the things that they cannot control. For example, government restrictions, right? If the government says I must wear a mask everywhere I go, and you get angry with that, then you're spending a lot of very precious time and energy trying to fight against the things you can't control. So if you're struggling, I would say acknowledge your emotions. Number two, focus on the areas that's in your scope of influence. What are the things that you can do? And if you can't think of 10 things, no problem. Just think of one thing. And if every day, just like your talks, yes, every day you just do one talk, after 100 days, you have 100 talks. If every day we take one action towards something, then every day we are moving forward. And I think that's really, really important.
I love the fact that you mentioned about the consistency and the one thing finding it out, but being doing it for a while also. And for other people, I do promote it. But one of the things that happens when you go in this journey is the validation and the results. Now all these transformations that you're part of, like, they are not validated at the same time. Suppose you do something, and you do something in stock trading, you want to get some money or something like that, because that's the instant gratification that you see in gambling and other sort of thing.
Mm,
But when you go about the transformations related to your physical body, or related to your mental, or just being a transformation towards a better human being that
mm,
you are a part of, but you don't get that validation. And I think because of that validation, you kind of get demotivated, and okay, I was better at doing. And so how do you go about people to understand from people psychology, and you have been a psychological expert, is to not to look for those validation, or if you're looking for those validation, what are the parameters you want to seek into, that whether I'm improving or not, how do I get to know?
yeah, yes, it's a great question. And I think you're talking about the difference between being extrinsically led, that means you're looking for something external to yourself, versus something that's internal to yourself. And I can say very honestly that both are important. Why? Because we live among fellow human beings and we can't help but want the people in our lives to tell us we're good. Now, the challenge is whether that validation is what you're living on. Do you have validation that you give yourself, or are you only relying on external validation? If you're only relying on that, then just like a carrot and a stick, when you take away the carrot, then you're left with very little. So I would advise people to look inward and ask yourself, what are the little things that I can give myself a pat on my back when I'm doing something difficult? What are those milestones? And don't wait for the big milestone, celebrate the small wins, right? So if let's say like 2 years ago, I went on a 10-kilometer run. And if I was looking at, oh, people are going to cheer for me when I finish my 10-kilometer run, and that was the only thing, I would have been very disappointed because I didn't run that fast and there was nobody waiting for me. But if internally I had a goal, a time goal, and I said, I want to finish by 1 hour, 30 minutes. And at the 1 hour mark, I look and see that I've only got a kilometer left to go. Then I already feel good inside. I don't even need to finish the race because I know I'm hitting my own internal goal. So, in terms of parameters, we need to have internal goals. We need to know when we need to celebrate. We need to have little milestones along the way that tell us we're doing good. And then if we have external validation, it's like the cherry on top of the cake, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's very true. But I think it happens the more the parameters are other way around. We always look for somebody to tell me, "Oh yes, you are doing very good. Oh yes, you are doing good," and that's where the excitement and the energy comes into. Yes, yes, you were really well. Instead of Yash telling to Yash himself that yes, you did well. So, but a great point made here, like for all the listeners over here, that look for those internal validations. Look at how you have progressed in your maybe quarantine journey or whatever you have done in the recent past. So that would be evident. Happiness scientist. Why these two words? Because scientist is somebody who is into, pretty much, researching about something and finding those innovations into the new world. And happiness is about enjoying the world. So these two words have combined and you have chosen these two words for you. So why these two words?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm passionate about happiness, and happiness is my business. But to go around the world and tell people I only want to talk about happiness, it seems very fluffy. Many people tell me it's like rainbows and unicorns, it doesn't really exist. So the scientist is the grounding part of it. And when I went to study positive psychology, we studied the research, the very grounded, evidence based research that has been validated by many experimental studies. And so when I put the two together, suddenly people say, oh, so there is a study of happiness. You can actually learn it. There's actually formulas for it. It's actually effective. And I can safely tell them, yes, there are things that science has proven to work on helping us to be happier. So the question is it something you want to try? And I guess it's more intriguing than saying I'm just doing happiness, full stop, right?
So I remember 10 years back that you left your job and then you moved full time into this, and then you went about training to children's and across the schools to spread this whole happiness thing. So why children's first? Because of the young minds that they have, so that they can be transformed at a very younger age, or there is
Mm.
some other reason to going into that segment of society.
Yeah. Well, I used to be a teacher, and I saw so many kids. And maybe those of you listening or watching on YouTube may have this experience if you work with children as well or your own children. And that is, they were very brilliant academically. They can study very well. Here in Singapore, academics are still very emphasized. But I realized one thing about them: they can study, they can score A's, but when it came to managing emotions, when it came to bouncing back from challenges, when it came from knowing how to actually form friendships, I realized number one, that they weren't that strong in that area. And number two, as a teacher, I was very ill equipped. I didn't know how to teach them all these things. Right. And isn't,
Sorry,
I
sorry. I
mean,
would I would stop you there because
yeah,
you mentioned as a teacher you were ill-equipped. A lot of
yes.
us, I tell you about the audience, we go about finding the thoughts in the system, finding the faults in the system. You just mentioned that you thought that you yourself are ill-equipped to give that education to that people. What triggered that thought into your mind? I want to go a bit deeper over there. Like, how did you judge about whether I am equipped to spread happiness or not? And how did it change when you came back through whatever course or whatever things that you did? But I want to understand what thought went into your mind that way to kind of call you as ill-equipped there.
Well, I mean, one of my students had a huge tantrum in class one day. So he got really angry. He overturned his table, and he stormed out of the classroom. And I was with 39 other students, and I didn't know what to do. Should I go after him? Where is he? Is he safe? I was really out of my mind, and I was a new teacher, and I was thinking, oh my God, they didn't tell us this in teaching school, that children would run out of the room. And as a teacher, you have a responsibility for their safety, isn't it? And so I went to look for him. I spent, I don't know, 30, 40 minutes, and I couldn't find him. And I thought, the worst had happened. I thought he was going to, do something to himself. And so I thought maybe I'll go and inform the parents. And I went to the staff room, I picked up the phone, and then next thing I heard was, Miss Yo. I heard his voice. And I was like, and there he was carrying my books. And he said, Miss Yo, what are you doing here? Shouldn't you be in class? And I just thought, there are two different people, the one who stormed out and the person being a good student getting my books. And so that was the moment where I started to ask myself, well, I don't know how to deal with this, right? I
And
know
then
how to
you're
teach him math,
and
but
then
yeah.
you're about training to students and to all of your clients from all around the world about what happiness is, and you travel around the world giving your talks related to happiness. And one of the talks being the, I think last year you gave a TEDx talks in Singapore
Mm.
regarding the happiness. So what happened in the talk, like for the viewers to be intrigued to go and watch the talk?
Yeah, I just described my journey of how, I was bullied, as you mentioned earlier, and then a teacher actually came to tell me that, I I, I should not feel inferior without anybody's consent. And I guess as a teenager, it's very easy to feel lousy about yourself. So anyway, she came into my life and she helped to transform it, I suppose, or at least the beginning part. And that led me into becoming a teacher myself. And being a teacher, observing these students, I started a journey into finding out how I can help them. So I spoke about that. And in the process of trying to figure out how to help them, I find out that I have to help myself first.
So you found out, so you found yourself, then you again went into, and now you have been quite vocal about spreading happiness around the world.
Yes, of course. I mean, I think when you have experienced it yourself, it is very different from just talking about it as head knowledge and what you studied, right? For me, it's something very personal. For me, it's something that I have taken everything that I've learned and applied it on myself. There's nothing I tell people that I have not personally tried. That is my promise.
So one of my question is about how exactly happiness has changed over the decades. Now I want to have a time journey, like
Mm.
how happiness parameters have changed. Like for happiness for a Gen Z, maybe like give him a tablet right now and he'll watch a content on it for like 3 hours, and that's happiness. So just take us through the time scales or the decades, how happiness have changed centuries, though we know about it, but and what's the future of this looks like what people will be happy about now and in the near future.
Yeah, I think, in the past, at least if I can just reference to my parents' generation, happiness was stability, having the basic needs met. I have a job, my two kids, my home, I'm set. And it was not so much about craving what Maslow's hierarchy of needs, self actualization, and personal development. Yes, people wanted to grow, but in those times, that was what they wanted. And when they had that, they were pretty satisfied with life. And then they had us, and our generation, I think, started thinking, how can I become a better person? How do I improve myself, right? And that's where we all start, this personal development wave start coming, and Tony Robbins and all of that started to happen, right? And then we spend a lot of time learning, we spend a lot of time watching inspirational talks. And then came our children's generation, which is the Generation Z, or the millennials first, and then the Generation Z. And the millennials are far more open. They feel happy when they're authentic. They don't like watching fake people on screen. They feel happy when they go to work and their work is meaningful. In the past, meaning doesn't even factor into the equation. Now, millennials go to work and say, we want this work to mean something. If not, I'm leaving. Now, the older generation looks at the millennials and think, these people don't know how to stay long in a job.
True, true.
Right? So true. But then comes the Generation Z, which is the digital natives. They feel happy as long as they're in front of this. Correct? And that's because the moment they are born, the parents take picture, selfie with the baby there already. And and I wouldn't say that all their happiness comes from this, but this is something that's a part of their life. So as we think about happiness for this generation, we want to think about, well, is technology really the bad guy? Are there ways in which we can harness the positives of technology to still connect with this generation? right? And if anything, face-to-face conversation or having time, quality time to spend with each other is still really important for relationships.
So I still remember the conversation that happens in the Gen Z, like then the kids. So if this is what makes him happy, give him this tablet. If this is what makes him happy, give them this happiness words do come over there as well. Now, one of my last question for today is what exactly now you're a mother of two. How do you, as a happiness scientist again, what do you do different than other mothers do?
Oh, good question. Well, I constantly tell my daughters that I don't really care about how well you do in school. More importantly, is that you must enjoy being in school. Enjoy the learning because life is short, isn't it? And if you just go to school just to get grades, I can do that for you. You don't have to go to school, but go to school and meet people, learn new things, try out new things. And yeah, so that's the one thing that I think differentiates me from many other mothers that I meet.
And what about the homeschooling part now?
I don't homeschool, but when she comes home, she has a lot of autonomy to decide what she wants and what they want, right? And I give them the chance to decide, is this time for me to do my work? Is this time for me to watch TV? Is this time for me to learn a new skill? So they have that liberty to choose. But of course, there's always a structure, right? Yeah, so that's where I think the research becomes really important because having children having free play over everything, that's also a recipe for disaster. What we need is a balance of rules versus autonomy.
Now, as of now, you just said that there is this wave of awakening coming into the world in our generation. We want to become better. We want to go and influence the world. We want to, be the person who can bring the change, who want to be there. What is the things that you are doing for this particular thing? I know you have been a trainer, you have been a speaker, but is there something that you are doing specifically as a happiness scientist that you want to share it to the world, or you are doing some courses, or you're taking some sort of things that you want to promote, that you want to tell it to the world or to the listeners right now?
Ah, okay. Well, yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that I want to share is that I'm doing lots of transformational work with schools. And to me, I think it starts from young. Many of the things that we talk about today, yes, start from when we are young in our mindset and in our hearts. And if there's one thing I want to share with the audience is that there's always a chance for us to start wherever we are, whether you're struggling or not. Yeah. But the work that I do with schools to me is the most meaningful because we transform entire communities and not just one person at a time.
Yeah, I think schools has been the place where you go and you can influence a lot of minds rather than individually going and influencing, and schools still hold that position in the society.
Mm.
Now, my last question to you for the closure at 7:45 today would be, what is some wonderful words you want to say to the community that we have started and we have been doing it continuously, bringing in influencers from all around the world, some beautiful words for our platform?
Yeah, I would say keep the faith. I know it's faith is intangible, but in positive psychology, the word we use is hope. And while we're going through these challenging times, hope means having a plan, having a goal, taking steps one step at a time towards your goal, and continue to be motivated. And even though you can't see, keep the faith, have hope, because with hope, anything is possible. So yeah, keep going, keep listening to the empowerment talks.
So thank you very much, Shaen, for coming to Empowerment Talks. And I want to thank all of the people who are watching us on YouTube right now. Thank you very much. And do subscribe to our YouTube channel to have been part of these conversations on a daily basis. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.